The house looked ordinary when the realtor unlocked the door. Beige walls, clean windows, the kind of place that disappears into memory the moment you turn away. That was what convinced Daniel to buy it. Nothing about it warned him. Nothing ever does. The first night, the silence felt thicker than it should have been. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that presses against the ears, as if the house itself were listening. Daniel lay awake on the mattress. He hadn't yet bothered to put a frame under, staring at the ceiling fan that wasn't turned on. At exactly 2:17 a.m., it creaked once. Just a small sound like wood shifting. He told himself how's to settle. That's what people say. The second night, the sound came again at 2:17. This time it wasn't the fan. It was the hallway floor. Daniel sat up, heart racing, listening. The house smelled faintly of dust and something older, something like damp paper. He waited for the noise to repeat. It didn't. Morning arrived without incident, and embarrassment replaced fear. By the fifth night, he stopped checking the time. The sound always came. A single, deliberate footstep outside the bedroom door. He opened the door once, standing barefoot on cold wood, staring into an empty hallway. The air felt wrong there, heavier, like stepping into a room where an argument had just ended. When he closed the door, the step came again, this time closer, as if something had learned where he was. Daniel began sleeping with the light on. The sound didn't stop. One morning, while unpacking, he found something wedged behind a heating vent in the bedroom. A strip of yellowed paper, folded tight. On it, written in shaky ink, were 3 words. "IT walks at night." Daniel laughed, but his hands shook as he threw it away. That night, the step came twice. The house had belonged to an elderly woman who died alone. That's what the neighbor said when Daniel finally asked. The neighbor's eyes lingered on the upstairs windows a little too long. "She used to complain about the pacing," the man added. "Said it never slept." Daniel sold the house 6 weeks later. The new owners reported no issues. The footsteps stopped the night before the for sale sign went up. The second house was brand new. Maya and her husband had waited years to afford it. Fresh paint, untouched carpets, appliances that still smelled like plastic. Nothing had ever happened there. No history. No deaths. That was the point. The first strange thing was the mirror. It was installed in the hallway bathroom, tall and frameless. Maya noticed that her reflection seemed slow sometimes. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough to make her blink and lean closer. She mentioned it once, joking, and her husband shrugged it off. The second thing was the shower. When Maya showered alone, she could swear she heard breathing behind the curtain. Soft, patient breathing, matching her own rhythm but always half a second late. She told herself it was the echo of the fan, the pipes, stress. One afternoon, she wiped steam from the mirror and froze. There were fingerprints on the glass. Not hers. Smaller. Pressed from the other side. She called her husband into the bathroom, but by the time he arrived, the mirror was clean. He smiled, kissed her forehead, told her new houses do strange things. That night, Maya woke to the sound of water running. The bathroom light was on. The mirror was fogged, even though no one had showered. As she wiped it again, words appeared beneath her hand, etched deep into the glass, visible only through condensation. "We share this place." Maya screamed. Her husband tore the mirror off the wall the next morning and smashed it in the driveway. The shards reflected the sky, the house, their terrified faces. The bathroom felt better afterward. Lighter. But the breathing moved to the bedroom. Then the kitchen. Always close. Always waiting. They moved out within a month. The house sold instantly. The third house was cheaper than it should have been. Ethan knew that, but he was running out of options. The landlord was eager, almost relieved to hand over the keys. He avoided eye contact, and when Ethan asked why the place had been vacant, the man only said, "People don't stay." The basement door was locked. Ethan didn't think much of it until the knocking started. It came from below the floorboards at night. Not banging. Knocking. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. Ethan ignored it for days, stuffing towels under the door, turning up the television. One night, the knocking changed. It followed him. Wherever he stood, the sound came from beneath his feet. He finally broke the basement lock. The stairs descended into darkness that felt unnatural, as if light itself didn't belong there. At the bottom, the concrete floor was scratched with marks that looked like fingernails dragged again and again toward the stairs. In the far corner stood a door. Not part of the house's design. Older. Warped. Breathing came from behind. Ethan ran. The knocking stopped after that. So did the sounds. The house became quiet in a way that felt satisfied. 2 weeks later, the basement door was open when he came home. The old door was gone. In its place was a mirror, tall and frameless, reflecting a hallway that wasn't his own. From the reflection, something knocked. Daniel thought about the house more often than he admitted. Even after moving into a small apartment across town, the memory followed him in quiet moments, while brushing his teeth, while lying in bed staring at the ceiling. Sometimes he would wake suddenly at night, convinced he had heard a footstep just outside his bedroom door. In the apartment, there was no hallway. Still, the sensation lingered like muscle memory. One night, unable to sleep, he searched online for the address of his old house. A local forum thread appeared, recently updated. Someone had asked if anyone else heard footsteps in the upstairs hallway at night. The account was new. The replies were dismissive. Old houses make noise. Probably pipes. Daniel closed the browser, his chest tight, and turned on every light in the apartment. Across town, Maya tried to convince herself that mirrors were just mirrors. She avoided them whenever possible, covered the bathroom one with a towel, looked at her phone instead of her reflection while fixing her hair. Yet reflections found her anyway: dark windows, turned-off television screens, the shine of a microwave door. Every reflective surface seemed to hold onto her image a fraction too long. One evening, while washing dishes, she noticed her reflection in the glass cabinet door across the kitchen. She turned her head. The reflection did not. It smiled. Maya dropped the plate. It shattered, the sound sharp and final. When she looked again, the reflection moved normally, her own terrified face staring back. She pressed her hands to the glass, heart pounding, whispering to herself that stress could do this, that fear could trick the mind. But deep down, she felt the same certainty she had felt the night the mirror spoke. Something had noticed her. Ethan tried to forget the basement. He avoided that part of the house entirely, even though the door now stood open whenever he came home. He never remembered leaving it that way. Sometimes, he swore he heard movement below, slow shifting sounds, like someone adjusting their weight in the dark. The mirror in the basement hallway showed something different every time he passed it. Sometimes the reflection lagged. Sometimes it showed the hallway empty behind him, even when he knew the house was occupied. Once, he saw a door in the reflection that didn't exist in his home at all. He began sleeping with his bedroom door locked. That didn't stop the knocking. It came softly now, polite, almost patient. Daniel, Maya, and Ethan never met. They lived separate lives in different neighborhoods, convinced their experiences were isolated. But fear has a way of pulling people toward the same answers. The forum thread grew. Someone mentioned mirrors. Someone else mentioned footsteps. A third spoke about knocking from below the house. The posts were written cautiously, embarrassed, as if each person feared sounding foolish. But the similarities were impossible to ignore. One user replied late one night, "Did anyone else notice it gets quieter when you acknowledge it?" The reply unsettled them more than any sound ever had. Maya tested the idea without meaning to. Alone in her bedroom, breathing shallow, she whispered into the dark, "I know you're there." The breathing stopped. Relief flooded her, brief and intoxicating. Then her closet door creaked open. Inside, the darkness felt deeper than it should have been, swallowing light rather than reflecting it. From within came a familiar sound. Footsteps. Ethan acknowledged it too, standing at the top of the basement stairs, voice shaking as he spoke into the void. "I hear you." The knocking became louder. Faster. Excited. Daniel never spoke to it directly. But one night, exhausted, angry, he shouted into his empty apartment, telling whatever followed him that it didn't belong there. The footsteps stopped forever. The silence that followed was worse. Weeks passed. Then months. The forum went quiet. Accounts stopped posting. New owners moved into old houses. Fresh, paint-covered scratches.